Hello, everybody, and welcome to this latest in the ValuesJam guest session series. Lindsay, great to have you here. And to start with, please introduce yourself and tell everybody about the great work you do.
Thanks, Alan. So my name is Lyndsay Kennedy. I am a capability and culture consultant. I've been working in the industry for the last 20 years across multiple countries, and I've recently returned back to the UK, which is exciting.
From
New Zealand. So I've worked across America, New Zealand, Australia, and South Africa as well.
Okay, and what brought you here?
Family. My husband's from Poole, and I met him when I was an international consultant in London. And we just decided after being abroad for 10 years, it was time to come home. And home was the UK. So we just pulled the Band-Aid. No time is better than right now. So we just decided to move and are very happy with having moved back to being closer to family.
Oh, good for you. And it takes courage to do that. So good on you. Now, I've got the card deck here. I'm just going to give them a bit of a shuffle. And then I'm going to invite you to guide me to choose a card. So first step, how many piles of cards shall I lay out in front of me?
6, please.
6. Any reason for the number 6?
Well, artistically, you should stick with 1, 3, 7, or 9, but 6 is a nice balanced number, so go for 6.
All right, so I've got pile 1 on my left and pile 6 on my right.
Mm-hmm.
So which number pile should I choose?
5.
Okay, so in pile 5, we've got 3, 6, 9 cards. So a number between 1 and 9?
7.
7. So I go from the back, 8, 7. And this is really weird because before we were recording, you mentioned openness. And that's what's come up. This happens sometimes with ValuesJam. You also mentioned tarot cards, and whether there is anything in all of that or not, I don't know. But strange things do happen when people are choosing these cards, and it's just happened again. So to start with, what does openness mean to you?
Openness means having the courage to share your authentic self with the world, as well as being open, or again, having the courage to receive and interpret the world as it is happening, or in a positive mindset of what is happening. Because you can be closed and receive and respond to the world through having a fixed mindset or through having limiting beliefs. But if you are open to opportunity or open to interpreting what's happening in the world. So it's both a receiving and a giving process.
I like the way that you've picked up on that immediately, because as soon as you started to speak, I was thinking, a lot of people, when they start to talk about openness, is about them being open, but not the 2 dimensions that you've covered. So I think that's a really important thing to pick up on in the beginning. And the other thing that's just come to mind is when you were talking about a positive mindset to the world and all of the rest of it, I was thinking you have less control over what is happening. And the only way to really be is in the way you respond, right? Because you can't control everything. So all you can control is the way that you respond. And if you do that in an open way, then it feels that you're going to have a better chance of that growth mindset that you talked about, rather than being fixed and closed. Now, there's another part of this opening question which is more imaginative. So when you think of the word openness, what images come to mind? What feelings come to mind? And what sounds come to mind?
Do you see like a visual of a head with an openness, but not with an explosion, which is usually the image of the
Yeah.
what's coming out, but more, you know, the radiance and the energy of perspective coming in and coming out
Yeah.
with lots of colors. Also, the vastness of the sky and the infinite possibility of the universe. And that feeling of the wind, of things passing through and passing on you, and being open to having lots of opportunities happen through the wind of opportunities. The sound of birds singing, light, happy Disney music, you know, just light and faint, not very much in front of, not forefront, light, faint in the distance, but it's definitely there, calling.
You know, I'm smiling here because I'm just loving the way that you've just thrown yourself into that question, right? It's good. It's just great. And funnily enough, I immediately thought of the sky, and you mentioned sky as well. For me, the sound of openness, one doesn't come to mind actually. It's more like silence, and just, well, let's see. And then the other word that comes to mind, and I suppose linked to a feeling, is just curiosity. So this openness with kind of, well, I wonder what's going to happen, you know, rather than making up what you want or don't want to happen. It's just like, well, let's see what unfolds and then what happens.
That leaning into opportunity, leaning into ambiguity, leaning into just letting the universe unfold or letting your life unfold. It's a very uncomfortable thing to do. Yet, when I've done that once in my life when I was made redundant in Australia during COVID.
Okay.
And I had to become very creative because no one was hiring international people. The government was literally saying, we will pay you if you hire local. So I had to become very creative in what I was going to do. And it was a very scary environment for me cognitively thinking about what to do. And I just leaned into having no idea what to do. And as an outcome of that, I met people that changed my life. I changed my career completely. And it made me much happier. I was a much happier person as an outcome. But it was an incredibly scary roller coaster, just waking up every day and going, what's happening? What's going to happen? Let's just go out and go in and have conversations like what we're having now, Alan. That openness to just letting things unfold.
I love. So, would you be able to share just one specific story? So, you know, you've mentioned this thing generally about that time and how you dealt with it. Can you think of something that happened that would demonstrate what the point that you've made generally with a specific example?
Well, so that example was, I had no idea what to do because getting an actual paid job was going to be very difficult in the short term future. So I went and just started looking at interesting charities that were complementary but were interesting in some way.
Right.
And I called up the charities and said, hey, I'm going to be around for the next 3 months and I'd love to get involved. What might that look like? And then I ended up facilitating executive roundtables for for-purpose leaders, and then writing white papers with the findings with that. And it was actually the writing of the white papers that I absolutely loved doing. I loved it. And from there, I realized how much, what a passion I have for consolidating information and putting it in a format that can live forever and help people through reading informed information. And through that as well, I made some really interesting connections and then found my next role at Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand. So it really, what did it do? It helped me transition into the areas that I wanted to get into without me even knowing that I was going to do that. I just called and said, hey, I'm around. Put me to work. I'll do anything. I'm intrigued with what you're doing. Let me just get involved. And I ended up doing the stuff that I'd been wanting to do in my career, but I'd never actually had the chance to do it. So yeah, the world works in mysterious ways.
That's dead right. And I think what you're describing is your behavior was aligned with your values, what's important to you. You didn't know where it was going to take you, but because you were being authentic, it ended up taking you to a place that you would like to have decided to go to if you could have done that. And I've got a story to share with you that's very, very similar at many levels to what you've just described. So it started with an invitation from some people that I had written a journal for to speak at a conference in New York. And they said, but it's only our second annual event, and so we can't afford to pay you a fee. We can't afford to pay for your flight. We can't afford to pay for your accommodation, but we would love you to come. So one voice in my head was saying, well, how can you? That just doesn't make sense financially. Another voice said, well, come on, they're nice guys. They're doing good work. You like New York. You can spend the weekend there, take your camera so you can do photography. So I agreed to go. Then about 2 weeks later, an email arrived with the program of speakers. And on the program of speakers was a guy called Philip Kotler. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the area of marketing, but Philip Kotler is known as like the grandfather of marketing. And it was his book that was compulsory reading for the marketing module when I did my course at university. So I was like, bloody hell, I'm going to be on the same stage as this guy that inspired my interest in branding and marketing. Then I get there, introduce myself to him, and told him the story I've just shared with you about his book. And he said, well, Alan, I hope you're not going to hold me accountable for your career. And he was lovely. And I said to him during the conversation, Philip, I'm writing a book at the moment about values. It's called The Values Economy. And I'm wondering whether you'd be interested to see the manuscript. He said, yes, I would love to. So I was like, happy. I got home, started to type the email to him and got a rush of courage and ended up saying, Philip, would you like to write the foreword to the book? And he did. And I don't know if you can see this, but on the front of the book, an excellent and insightful addition to our business literature by Philip Kotler. So to your point, right? No way could I have had an ambition for that to be an outcome. Just no way. But like you, I just followed what I thought was important. And sometimes beautiful things happen.
It's definitely it's the concept of saying yes wherever possible when you know that what you're saying yes to is adding value or helping people in the world and is linked to your values. And from that, you can just end up, I always use the analogy of you can either imagine a river, right? I love canoeing down rivers. It's my favorite thing to do.
Right.
And, canoe, big bucket, two friends, a big cooler box with all your drinks and food that you need for the week, and life couldn't be more perfect than on a canoe. And you could go down and try and paddle to the left and paddle to the right and paddle upstream and do all of these different things. Or you can just course correct by putting your paddle in. And actually, the more white water the river is, and the faster it goes, the less you should do It's just putting your oar in and course correcting the direction, and then you go with the flow. And so the crazier life gets, the more it's just about putting your hands up, going with the flow, and popping that oar in when you're going, hey, I'm about to crash into the side. Let's just course correct a little bit, and off we go. And every time we think about, if you meet people or you just don't know where you're going, just go with the flow. Don't crash into the side. Don't crash into the sides if possible.
I love that metaphor. That's such a strong metaphor. And actually, you reminded me of a quote. I don't know if you're interested in Formula One, but Mario Andretti was, I think, a world champion. And his famous quote is, "If you're in control, you're not going fast enough."
I've heard that. Yeah, just on the edge. Oh.
Now let's get really practical now with this next
Okay.
question, which is, where have you noticed a lack of openness?
Where have I noticed a lack of openness? It's interesting. I've done a self-assessment with using the Blueprint toolset, which is an assessment that helps understand your leadership characteristics mapped across your mindset. So whether you have a growth mindset or fixed mindset, and one of the feedbacks from my mindset is being less open to the trusting of others. We kind of touched on this. Which I thought was interesting, because I was like, of course I trust people. What are you talking about? Of course, like back up. What are you talking about? And I've been trying to think about, how does that actually show up in the world? And so the question, where do you notice a lack of openness? And I try and become really personal about that. Is it a lack of openness about truly leaning into the self you are? That courage of openness, of stepping into, especially for me right now as I transition through a massive life change, right? New role, new life, new almost everything as I've moved countries. That lack of openness for truly leaning into that next step and challenging yourself to, like, instead of just, what am I trying to say? Lack of openness of the courage of taking a big step or a big leap. Alan, you can probably articulate it better back to me.
No, I'm listening to what you're saying, and this might not be what you mean. So please do say if you were going somewhere else. But I think sometimes we put too much pressure on ourselves to predict what an outcome is going to be. And so when I was listening to you, I was thinking, in your situation, maybe there's value in not having the pressure to, not feeling the pressure to have to decide what the outcome should or should not be, and instead just be true to what's important to you, be open, and see what happens. And I know that's a lot easier to say than it is to do.
That's exactly what I needed to hear. It wasn't what I was saying, but it's actually what I should have been saying. So thank you. That's an incredible perspective. And I can feel my shoulders and my chest just opening as you talk about that. I'm a very goal-orientated person. I'm very good at articulating goals and strategies on how to get there, and leaning into just being open and sitting back and just being open and not being directive, of just going with the flow, going down the stream. So that lack of openness, i.e., just that lack of leaning into the possibility and just being current and present, is actually the job to be done. Oh.
And when I asked you that question, what immediately came to my mind was many corporate situations that I've experienced where there is certainly not openness because people are playing a role, and they've got their corporate persona that they're playing. And I don't know. I just I played it as well, because that's what you do in that sort of environment. But it's not healthy in the long term. I don't think. But it is this thing about, particularly in kind of certain, in knowledge profession, I suppose, where you've got people in suits and looking really smart and using the right language and all of that sort of stuff. And then even the behaviors like, well, we always go to the pub on a Friday or whatever it is, or are you not going to play golf? Oh, really? You can't play golf? All of that kind of stuff going on. Um, so that was that corporate world was what came to mind. And of course, that's not all corporate environments are like that. And probably over my career, I've seen a really refreshing change to the extent to which people and difference is accepted in corporate environments, but still way to go, right?
And you wonder, how long will a person stay and thrive? So we want to thrive, not survive. How long will a person and stay and thrive in your company if they are showing up as their other self with the mask? I recall I had a team member on my team, and after about 7 months or so, he came up to me and said, "Lindsay, I haven't told you this, but I'm actually an artist. And I do, I create this art and this is what I do." And I said, "Wow, like you've never told me any of this. None of this has come up in any of our coaching conversations or planning or anything." He's like, "Yes, I keep my work and my personal life very separate. And I only share this information with when I know I can properly trust you." And I thought, wow, isn't it incredible that you can keep something that's so passionate about your life,
Yeah.
so separate for so long? And then what is it that changed that got to being open? And then how was the dynamic of the relationship after that, where there was that openness and therefore that openness to trust in a different way, and therefore to also open yourself up to try new things, both in work as well, and expanding and working more in your stretch zone in work as well. So I thought that was quite interesting. But more recently, in my last team, we would every Monday, the team was particularly good in celebrating individuality and personal, both your work. You bring your true self to work, and as opposed to work as separate. And in the New Zealand culture in particular, they very much foster a balance of work, family, and work. I've never seen anything like it in any other country, and I found that quite challenging because I didn't know how to work around boundaries. There were never
Yeah.
there were never any boundaries in my world, and it was always work, 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 and there were consequences of that as well. And in this team I was in, every Monday we would start the meeting. The first 20 minutes was talking about what we did on the weekend. So each person would go around and literally share a few minutes, like what they did on the weekend, what they were most grateful for. And it was adding what we were most grateful for that changed the dynamic of the conversation. So we first of all prioritized the person and what's going on in the person's world. So you're going into the week really going, wow, okay, you're having a whole lot of stuff happening out there, and thank you for sharing. How might we be able to help you, given you might not be in the right headspace to actually deliver all of your work, for instance, because there's a lot going on personally, and we bring our home into work. But the gratitude was incredible, because suddenly we were flipping and going, gratitude practice in general is incredibly important to view things positively. yeah, it really reset the conversation. And it was the most constructive team culture I've ever worked in 20, more than 20, 25 years. So I highly recommend trying that out.
Yeah, some great examples there of really practical things that you can do. And you've reminded me of, so I was running a hotel, and one of the housekeeping team, sort of the supervisors came to see me. We were going to be full that night, and she said one of her team has said that her child has been reported as sick at school. And so this lady wanted to go and collect her child from school. And she said, but we need to get all of the rooms back because we're full tonight. This is what the supervisor told me. And so I said, well, what are you going to do? And she said, well, do you think I should let her go or not? So I said, well, if it was you and your child, would you expect me to let you go or not? And she said, okay, we don't need to have any more of this conversation. And she went and she did the cleaning herself. You know, she cleaned the room herself. But that was because, like you said earlier, it was engaging with the real person, not the person performing the role of a housekeeper.
Yep. Just two different things.
Yeah. So in ValuesJam, there's a chance for you to ask your own question. So let's have a go at that now. And there's a couple of ways that you can do this. If you've got the answer already, because that's what's prompted the question, then feel free to share the answer immediately. Or instead of that, if you'd prefer, you can ask me the question and then you can respond to my answer, right? So we can do it either way, whichever you prefer. So ask your own question about openness, beginning with who, what, where, when, why, or how.
Beginning with who, what, when, where, how, why, or how. When do you think openness is most important to engage with, and why?
That's two questions.
Yeah. When do you think openness is most
okay.
important to engage
But
with?
when is it most important and why to be open? I'm thinking that it's something to do with the importance of what's being discussed or addressed or decided, and also the extent to which values are being considered. So what I mean by that is the difference between deciding what you're going to have for dinner tonight compared to something like whether you're going to start a family. So, you know, there's a different level of importance about either of those discussions. And then the other part of it about the values is that if it's something that is really not important to you, then I guess you can kind of muddle your way through without necessarily being open. But I think that if it is important to you, then it's critical that you are open about your feelings. So there's two levels of it there, I guess. And as to the why, because it's the best way to make the decision, in short. So what were you thinking when you asked the question, and what thoughts do you have in response to what I've just said?
I was thinking around sometimes when we need to be open is often the times when we think you don't need to be. And that's actually when we need to flip it. So when we're thinking about other people, when other people are sharing their perspectives or what they want to do, and we can sometimes close ourselves off to that, or off to seeing and not viewing it as being as important as our planned openness. So I was thinking about that openness in relation to conversations and conversations with others, and being open to their perspectives and their recommendations if they are in conflict with our own.
There's also something about, have you ever met somebody who was a bit too open? You know?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. There can be oversharing, and there is a societal level of agreement of what should be shared and when, and you learn a lot. You learn that a lot more when you grow up, as you grow up, right? Teenagers, young adults tend to overshare. That from my experience, that's what I felt. But that's just their level of openness in a conversation compared to other people's comfortableness in receiving that information and time limitations to listening to that information in a way.
Yeah, and I'm thinking that, who says what's right or what that level should be? Because, you could have a scenario where you've got somebody, we might say, oversharing, but from their perspective, they're just being themselves, right? This is me as I am, and isn't that a joy? And then the other person is, oh, I wish you hadn't told me all of that.
And that relates to, that's why personality assessments are really interesting. So if you look at the Enneagram, there is a personality, which is the artist. And the artist really deep dives into emotion, and they love to talk about the deep depths of emotion. And other people would not be comfortable with sitting down in a conversation and diving head on into a deep emotional conversation. Whereas if you look at a 5-factor personality model, openness is actually one of the personality characteristics as well. How open how open you are to conversations and engagement with other people. So openness is definitely been an assessment criteria in understanding people's personalities and people's motivations and how people engage with the world. And yeah, absolutely. It's reading the room and adjusting your character accordingly if you have a EQ strong enough to be aware of doing that in the first place.
And maybe there's also something about that starting point not necessarily having to be where you stay. So it might be, like you said, you read the room or the person, or you do your best, and then you're able to start a communication at one level, and then hopefully you're able to get it to move forward so that there's more openness as the level of comfort between the people increases, right?
Yeah.
So I think what's coming through for me here is that there's not just one place that you are and that remains constant. It can actually shift according to the level of trust and confidence between the parties, if you like.
Yeah, and that's where we're talking about building trust and setting an example. So I'm thinking, if you're looking at a new leader who's coming in and trying to set the tone of their team, right?
Yeah.
One of the first things you do is stand up and talk to your expectations of what you want everyone to, everything to be done, and what you want people to be working towards. But how do you do that? And what do you share about yourself? Because all of that sets the tone about how every other person in the team is going to be responding to you or responding to each other, because you've set a profile. So you could start off talking about a personal story and then getting into the business level, and suddenly you go, okay, I want to talk about both the person and the company, or you go straight into results and value driven. So, and I've seen it done in different ways, but it really does set the tone and people will follow that. So I
For
think
sure.
it's, yeah, um, just I tend to let the other person lead in that conversation first and then match it accordingly. Because I think before, when I was younger, I would jump straight in and set the tone, and that's probably not the best way to go about things.
Well,
um,
in Values Jam, so what happens a lot is that people say, "Oh, this thing crossed my mind, and I haven't thought about it for sometimes decades or whatever." And you've just resurfaced a story that I want to share with you. I was how old? About 23, and I was the assistant food and beverage manager in a hotel in London. And I had this bright idea that we should use some space outside the restaurant because it was in central London near Leicester Square, and we should sell ice cream sundaes. I thought that would be a really good extra revenue to generate. So I uh, I sent. I think it was in the days when we sent memos. Do you remember that? Do you remember sending memos?
mm,
Anyway, I sent a note to the head chef explaining that on Monday we needed to have these six ice cream sundae recipes, and if he could have them um, sent to me by midday on the Monday so that we could start preparing for opening. So midday arrived and I hadn't received anything. So I went to the kitchen, and this is, you can imagine, in the work up towards the lunch service. So, and said, "Chef, where are the ice cream sundae recipes I asked for?" And he actually chased me out of the kitchen with a cleaver.
chefs are terrified.
Well, some are, others are not at all. But and you talking about your artist example earlier. I love great chefs. I think they're amazing. It's an amazing profession. But anyway, the point there was that I was just. It was in response to your point about how you led the way in the way that you thought things should be without really thinking very much about other people. And I did
Mm,
that on that occasion. It was such a really bad behavior on my part, but I thought I was being a manager.
yeah. So, what did you do differently after that? What were the lessons that you took from that?
I guess it was to involve, and since then, I don't know that it would be a direct result, but maybe it played a part. I am very collaborative and inclusive in the way that I work when I'm working with teams. So, for instance, if I was to repeat that example, I'd be saying to the chef, "You're the person that knows what to do for ice cream sundaes. When are you going to have time to do it? When are we going to be able to start? And what else do we need to consider?" So it's more like a facilitator. And the term servant leadership is used maybe a bit too much, but my more natural style of leadership as I got older, rather than come on, tally ho.
Yeah. And perhaps asking, have you seen this done before anywhere? And
Yeah,
are
exactly.
there any lessons to be learned before we
Yeah.
before we start on this? Yeah.
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 So I think this is a good point to draw this values jam to a close about openness, and it's always the same question at the end of a values jam, which is, what are you encouraged to do differently about openness as a result of our conversation?
This conversation has been incredibly timely. Didn't realize I needed to hear what we spoke about, but did once I heard it. So I'm encouraged to get back into my boat and only steer when I need to and enjoy this crazy ride that I'm going on and be open to all the different conversations that I can possibly have with all the different incredible people I'm meeting, and just be open to the universe, both giving and receiving as well. Just, yeah, succumb to this ride down the river. I realized I was paddling upriver. I've been paddling upriver and putting little marks to create a whitewater competition going down the river. I just need to kind of chill out and chill out a bit more and just lean into this curious opportunity of the universe that we have.
Well, I've got mixed feelings hearing you, because one part of me is jumping up and down with excitement, saying, isn't it amazing that you've had that kind of revelation because of this Values Jam conversation that we've had? But there's a kind of more practical part of me that's saying, yeah, but Lindsay, it is easier to say that than it is to actually do it.
Very, yeah. I've got to remember that action, you still have to take action. Can't just sit back and do nothing.
Yeah.
But it's how we interpret. It's the interpretation. It's the mind setting of the approach of that action.
Yeah.
That is what transitions the conversations and the planning into, going into a scary interview versus a curious conversation that you don't know what the outcome could be. Very different mindset and approach to the same experience. So it's the openness of that element that is the change. It's a change in that is the openness, that is the change.
Yeah. And for me, mine's a really simple one, but I just love to bits that metaphor of the canoe. I think it's fabulous, because not only have you got the kind of the physical environment of the way that the river moves, or the sides of the banks, I suppose. You've also got the different paces of the water in different places. You've got the different depths, boulders, all of that. You've got maybe sometimes in bare sunlight, sometimes covered by trees. It's just such a fantastic metaphor for life. And I love the way that you said about how, you really don't have to work that hard if you just go with the flow. And yeah, I picked up on the word current as well, because you used current time, but then of course there's the current of the water.
Yes,
so there's a load of stuff in there that I enjoy playing with metaphors like that. So I might try and expand on it, but I will always credit you for, if I mention that at all, for being the person that brought it up. So Lindsay, thank you for your openness to join this Values Jam guest session series. It's been great.
Thank you for having me. It's really took a lot of courage for me to talk about some of that stuff on record. So yeah, thank you, Alan. That was great.
All right, cheers.
Thanks. Bye.